Hey everyone, welcome back to Codecraft channel, and this is the second video of our CSS series where we will be covering CSS positions. In this playlist, we will be covering all the topics of CSS which are asked in the interviews frequently. So please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already to get notified at the earliest whenever I upload new videos. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So guys, I have opened my code editor. I have created a basic HTML template and I have also created a blank CSS file as of now. But before moving into the coding part, let's first understand why do you need CSS positions. CSS positions lets you to control the positioning of your HTML elements. With the help of CSS positions, you can move around your elements from their original positions. In some cases, it affects the normal document layout, but in some cases, it does not. So let's move into the coding and let's understand how it works. So what I will do is first I will create a div. So this is a parent div, so I will give it a class as parent, and in this div I will create two more child divs, child1 and child2, right? These are two child divs that I have, right? So now let me give them a basic styling. So 300 pixels width, 300 pixels height, background color would be red. And let me also give some basic styling to the childs also, right? Child 2, so these both will have width of 100 pixels, height of 100 pixels, and background color would be different, so I will give it different. So child 1 will have background color blue and child 2 will have background color green, right? So every element that you create in your HTML file will have a position property. Now, what will be the default value of that position property? So the default value of the position property is static. Now, in static position, when the position of the element is static, you can't move around the element. The element will remain on its original position. So this is position static. By default, all the elements have position static. You can't move the elements. So there are some properties available in CSS like top, right, bottom, left. When they are combined with the position property, you can move around the elements. But those properties does not work for position static. So if I give you an example, let's take an example of this div, which is child1, right? So if I give it a position as static, right? Static, and I try to move it. So for moving the elements, we have these four properties. What are these four properties? I am noting it down on line number 21. If you see, top, right, bottom, left, and I will comment this for your reference. So this is top, right, bottom, left, right? So these are four properties with which you can move the elements. So now if you want to combine your position static with these properties, so now if you try to move your elements with giving the position as static, you can't do it, because with the position static your element can't be moved, it will remain on its original position. So let's say if I try to move the blue box from top 50 pixels. So if I try to move it from top by 50 pixel, so you see there is no change. The blue box remains on its original position. So position static is the default value. So if you don't give it also, then also it will take the position as static for all the elements by default. So this is position static. Now let's move to the next value that you can give to the position property. The next value is position relative, right? So now as I told you that in position static you can't move the element from its original position. Now but in position relative the case is completely opposite. Now in position relative you can move the element from its original position using these four properties: top, right, bottom, left. Right? You can move these elements by these properties. So now if I change, instead of position static, I will use position relative. So if you see position relative I have given, top is given as 50 pixel, which means I want to move the blue box from the top by 50 pixels. So as you can see, the blue box has moved down by 50 pixels, right? And in position relative, when the element moves from its original position, it does not affect the other layout or other document flow. So now if you can see, when I moved the blue box by 50 pixels down, the green box remains on its original position. So the green box does not get changed. Now why it does not get changed? Because when the blue box is moved by 50 pixels, it moves from its original position, but the spacing that it already had, it reserves its spacing there at its original position where it was present earlier. So when the blue box was present at the top of the red box, it reserves its space there. So if you move it down or move it somewhere else also, so if I move it from left also, if you see top is 50 pixels and I also give left by 50 pixels. So if I give left 50 pixels, so now if you see it is moving to the right by 50 pixels, right? It is moving to the right by 50 pixels, but it is reserving its space at its original position, which was there earlier. You can see the spacing of the blue box above the green box is reserved. Green box does not move upwards because the spacing of the blue box is reserved there. So when you give the position relative to any of the element and move it from its original position, it does not affect the document layout. It reserves its space at its original position. So this is position relative, my friends. Now let's move to the next position. So next position value that you can give is position absolute. So now what do you think? What change will happen when I give position absolute instead of relative? Let's check it. So now let me change the position relative to position absolute. Let's see what happens. So if I change the position relative to position absolute, so what changes you observe here? So the first change that we have observed is that in case of position relative, the green box was not moving to the top because the blue box reserved its space at its original position. But now if we move the blue box with the help of position absolute, in that case, what happens is that the green box moved upwards at the position of the blue box, because blue box is not reserving its space at its original position. This means that when you give position absolute to any of the element, it does not reserve its space at its original position, and it also affects the other layout. So as you can see, it is affecting the other layout because the green box is moving upwards. But in case of position relative, the green box was intact at its original position. The blue box was not affecting the position of the green box. So this is the difference between position relative and absolute. But we also have one more difference, my friends. Let's see that also. By now, you may think that the blue box is moving relatively to the red box, right? Because red box is the parent of blue box. So blue box may be moving relatively to the red box. But this is not the case. If you look into it, to explain this, let me change my code. So what I will do is I will give a padding or maybe a margin. Let me give a margin to the parent from top, let's say 200 pixels. So guys, now if you observe the changes, the blue box is not moving relatively to the red box, but the blue box is moving relatively to the HTML document. So if you have given top 50 pixel and left 50 pixel, that particularly means that blue box will take the spacing from the top of the document 50 pixels and left of the document 50 pixels. So it is getting moved from the top of the document. Now why this is happening is because whenever you give position absolute to any of the element, it moves relatively to its nearest parent element. Now what does that mean is, by default, when you give position absolute to any of the element, it considers its parent to be the HTML document directly. It does not consider any of the other elements in between. It directly considers its parent to be the HTML document. So if you see, blue box is moving relatively to this document. So it is taking top 50 pixels from top, 50 pixels from left. So it is moving to the right and moving 50 pixels to the bottom, right? It is not moving relatively to the red box. So to fix this, what we can do? What is the solution for this? So the solution for this is that to tell CSS, I need to give position relative to this parent red box, so that CSS knows that I want to move this blue box relatively to this red box. So now if I give position relative to this red box, now you observe the changes. Now it is moving relatively to the red box. You see, wherever the red box is starting, it is moving down by 50 pixels from there and moving to the right by 50 pixels from there, wherever the red box starts, right? It is not moving relatively to the HTML document now. It is moving relatively to the red box. So this was position absolute. So let's move to the next type of position. So the next type of position value that we can give is position fixed. Now what position fixed will do is it will fix your element at a particular point, and whenever you scroll the screen also, the other elements will get moved out of the screen, but this element for which you made the position as fixed, that element will never move from the screen. That will always remain fixed to the screen. So to give this example, let me do one thing. Let me increase the margin top so that we can scroll the screen. So for this parent element, let me increase the margin. So let me give 100 ph of margin top, right? So now you can see we can scroll the page, right? So now for child 1, if I want the child 1 to be fixed at a particular point on the screen and it should not move even if I am scrolling the screen, right? So I can give position fixed to it. So let's try it out. So now I will apply position fixed to this child 1. So now if you see, I have added position fixed, right? And I have also given top 50 pixels and left 50 pixels. Now position fixed will always move your element relative to the HTML document. So if you are giving top as 50 pixels, that means it will move your element from the top by 50 pixels. But from which top? From the top of the document, not from the top of your this parent red box. It will always move your element relatively to the HTML document. So now if you see, I have given top 50 pixels, left 50 pixels. This means that it will move down my blue box from the top by 50 pixels, but from the top of the HTML document, and also will move my blue box from the left by 50 pixels, but from the left of my HTML document, as it is doing now if you observe the change. But the main key thing here to understand is that if I have this blue box stuck at this point, fixed at this point, and if I scroll the screen, if I scroll the screen, so you see, if I scroll the screen, this is not moving out of the screen at any point, right? It is always fixed at that particular point on the screen, even if I am scrolling down. So this is position fixed. And also one more thing to understand here is that it is also affecting the positioning of the other layout. So if you see, this green box is also moving upwards because the blue box is not reserving its space there at its original position. So it is moving out of the normal flow of the document, and the green box is taking its space and shifting the layout. Also, one more thing that I want to tell you here is that whenever you are giving position fixed to any of the element, as we discussed, it always moves relative to the HTML document. So you don't need this position relative here, right? Because it was needed in case of position absolute, but in this case it's not needed. So if I remove this also, then also this will not impact anything. So if you can see, the behavior is still the same. So that is redundant in case of position fixed. So guys, let's move to the next type of position that we have is position sticky. Position sticky is a combination of both position relative and position fixed. Like it behaves like both position relative and fixed. Whenever you give position sticky to any of the element, you need to also provide a offset point or kind of a starting point or a threshold point whenever that point reaches to the top of the document. When you scroll the document or when you scroll the screen, whenever that threshold point reaches to the top of the document and is about to scroll away or is about to go out of the viewport, at that particular point, your element becomes fixed to the screen. And before that point, your element behaves like position relative. So let's understand this whole explanation with an example, right? So what I am trying to do is here, let me first give also give a margin from bottom to this parent to explain you this point. So margin bottom I have given. So let me change this positions fixed to sticky. And let me also comment these two properties as of now. So position sticky, right? Position sticky. So I've refreshed the page, and if you observe the changes carefully, if I scroll down, right, now it is behaving like position relative as it is on its original position. We have not given any top, left, bottom, right, any of these properties. So that's why it's on its position. But as I said, this is not impacting anything as of now. Now, why is it not impacting anything? Right, position sticky, as we said, it should be fixed at some point, right? Like after that threshold point is reaches. So now let's observe the changes carefully, what happens. So if you see, I am scrolling it out, but it is not becoming, the blue box is not getting fixed at any point of time, right? You see, it is not getting fixed. Now, why is it not happening? As I already told you that when you apply position sticky to any of the element, you also need to provide a offset point. You also need to provide a offset point. Now, how can you provide that offset point? You can provide that offset point by giving this top value. By giving this top value, right? This will act as an offset point. After this point reaches to the top of the document, then your element becomes or behaves like position fixed, and before that it behaves like position relative. So let me uncomment this thing. Let me uncomment this top value, and instead of yeah, let's keep it 50 only as of now. So if you see now, please observe the changes carefully. Please observe the changes carefully. So what I am doing here is I have refreshed the page. Now you see I am scrolling it down. It is still behaving like position relative, like it's not changed. Now here the top is not it's not adding spacing from the top of the red box, because the parent ancestor or like the top is acting like a offset point here, right? And it will act as a offset point. After that offset point is reached, it will take the spacing from the top, but from the top of the document, not from this red box, because red box is not considered to be its parent. The document will be considered as the parent always in position sticky as well. Whenever this offset point reaches to the top of the document, then your element takes this spacing or moves down by this spacing, right? And we get fixed to that point. So now what is happening here is it is getting there, and then it is reaching this point, moving the blue box 50 pixel down and sticking it there or making it fixed there, if you see. One more thing to notice here is that whenever you scroll the screen and your threshold point is reached, your blue box become fixed, but whenever this blue box touch the bottom end of your containing element or the parent element of this blue box, then your blue box again scrolls away with that. Then your blue box does not remain fixed at that particular point. So let me show you that. If you see, I am scrolling down, and blue box becomes fixed. Right now it is fixed till this red box is not scrolled away. Now when it reaches the bottom end of the red box, if you see, it is fixed till now, right? And when it reaches the bottom end of this red box, it also gets scrolled away now. So this is the basic nature of position sticky, that whenever your this offset point or starting point is reached, before that it's position relative, right? It's normal behavior. Then after that offset point is reached, it becomes fixed to the screen. And after that containing element or the parent element is scrolled from the screen, and your blue box or your child element, whenever your child element reaches the bottom end of your parent element, then your child element again gets scrolled away. It does not remain fixed like position fixed. So this is the main difference between position sticky and fixed, that position fixed always remain fixed to the point that you mention, but position sticky changes its behavior. Right? Position sticky changes its behavior. Now one more thing I want you to notice is that if you observe, since this is behaving like position relative, in position sticky also, whenever the element is moved, it will reserve its space at its original position, and the other layout will not get affected by this. This moves out of the normal flow of the document, but the layout will not get impacted. So if you see, the green box is not getting impacted by this. The green box is remaining intact at its own original position, and it is not moving up when the position of blue box changes. So that is what I wanted to explain you. One last point. So that was it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and also subscribe for more CSS videos. And also stay tuned for the upcoming videos in our CSS series. Thank you so much for watching.